Dark Sky Preserve allows us to educate our park visitors.
As the interpretive staff, we are very busy at Cypress Hills.
It's a huge universe. There's lots to learn.
Today we're up at the top of the plateau of the Cypress Hills on the Saskatchewan side of the Interprovincial Park, just 30 kilometers south of Maple Creek. And this part of the park is really a fun place for families to come. There's lots of things to see and do here. We have a beautiful forest environment here and beautiful grasslands, and it's kind of an anomaly on the prairies. One of the really unique aspects of Cypress Hills is our elevation. We're as high or a little bit higher than the town site of Banff. When you look at that, we're way up there. And when you go to any of our lookout points or scenic vistas, you can see down below onto the prairies and really get a good idea of how high we are. And with our elevation, we also have a very nice forest environment. And this is the only park in Saskatchewan that has lodgepole pine trees that grow in the higher elevations, and they're normally found in the Rocky Mountain areas of Canada. Cypress Hills has been designated a Dark Sky Preserve, and that occurred in 2004. What is a Dark Sky Preserve? It is a place that will preserve the darkness of the night sky by reducing light pollution. Light pollution is lights that stray. The light strays away and up into the sky, into the atmosphere, and causes a big white glow. Our mandate is to preserve and protect the landscape that we have our park on. And along with that comes educating the public on what is important about a natural landscape, a natural and healthy ecosystem. And the Dark Sky Preserve certainly fits right in with that, because without the darkness of the sky and that nice dark cycle, if we have too much light pollution, then we start to lose the important things that make up the landscape. And providing that dark and light cycle, which is so important, and trying to maintain the overall ecosystem within the park boundaries and beyond. We had a group of amateur astronomers that were visiting the hills and using it for their dark sky viewing for many years prior to that. And they decided that this area was so special and the skies were so clear because of our elevation that they wanted to bring some importance to the dark sky of Cypress Hills. And so they helped us get the designation for the Dark Sky Preserve. And since that time, we've had a huge response to the beautiful skies and the summer star party that occurs here every year in August. What makes up the Saskatchewan Summer Star Party organization is the Saskatoon and Regina chapters of the Royal Astronomical Society.
Well, the Saskatchewan Summer Star Party really had its start back in 1989 when a few of the members from the Regina Astronomical Society came out here to do some observing and public observing. So because the astronomy clubs in Canada are very geared towards promoting astronomy and teaching astronomy to people, they spent a lot of time setting up telescopes and giving people views of Saturn and the moon and all those wonderful things up there to see. And that's really where it got started, was back in 1989. And from there it just kind of grew and grew, and now we're well over 300 people coming out on a weekend to come enjoy the beautiful dark skies we have in Cypress Hills. It's one of the premier star parties in all of North America, and we're very fortunate of where we are here in the Cypress Hills because we're at a high elevation. We're at the highest point between the Rockies and Labrador. And that gives us, that elevation gets us up out of the atmosphere, out of the heat of the plane, and allows us to have really nice dark and beautiful skies. And we recognize that as astronomers as very precious to us. We enjoy watching the stars and sharing that with other people. So Cypress Hills becomes a very natural place to try and protect.
Now, the Friends of Cypress Hills also became quite interested in what was going on here, and the Friends of Cypress Hills have a mandate to assist with providing educational opportunities in the park here. So they put their heads together and decided that we should build an observatory here. And during that time, they continued to fundraise and finally raised enough money to build an observatory and a yurt classroom where we could now house people indoors and outdoors to view the night sky.
The Friends of Cypress Hills is a membership by people in the area that actually want to work with the park or work and do things within the park. Several of us happened to go out to Lookout Point one night when the interpreters had a whole slew of kids along with them in Ranger of the Night, where they would look at the stars and stuff like this. And it was quite a miserable night. But yet the kids were out there shivering away and everything and just loving it. So the idea from that came the idea that, maybe we should do something where the interpreters could use a facility, to help that program along. And having had access to the Summer Star Party and, just the interest that it piqued made us think that, I think it's doable. And that's how it started.
When we have park visitors that come here, it's our role to help them to understand what a dark sky means, what importance it brings to the landscape of the park.
We always look forward to the Summer Star Party because we get a whole bunch of astronomers in. They are so knowledgeable and so helpful, and we essentially go up to the observatory and hang out and listen to them and go, what are you looking at? They have all the different sizes of telescopes, and we just really enjoy having them here. We sit in on the afternoon programs, all the different lectures, so we learn that way. We are working. That's what we like to say. We are working, but we do learn a lot from them, and it's just an amazing thing to go into Meadows Campground late at night, and you're wandering around in the dark, and you just say, oh, hello, we're the park staff, program staff, and what are you looking at?
As we're doing the job and you learn all these different things, you get a huge respect for everything. And the astronomy, I think, was a real big eye-opener for me, because I wasn't that keen on astronomy, and I was quite privileged because I lived in a small town, so I could look up and I could still see a lot of the stars. But by the time that I first got to look through a telescope and learn how do you maneuver different things, and you see Saturn, I think. Saturn's the best one. You see Saturn through a telescope for the first time, you're kind of blown away because you're like, is that a sticker? Like, there's rings, you can see everything, and the detail in it is so cool that it just something clicks in you. And I love showing new people who come to the park Saturn for the first time, because there's always that that joy that they get when they're just seeing it. And I think as soon as you become connected with the night sky and you learn to look up and you appreciate it, you just get hooked, and then you start learning about more and more things, and you always want to travel and find new skies and see different objects in there, which is it's fascinating.
Yeah.
I think one of the other fun things that we do in trying to bring in the incorporation about the night sky and our nocturnal animals is one of the plays that Mimi wrote was Starlight Follies, and so that's all about Galileo coming to Earth to try and learn about the nocturnal creatures and basically saving the world from light pollution, which is really fun. So it's a joy. We make fools of ourselves and we love it.
So when you turn in for the night, keep it dark instead of bright. Turn off the lights, woo-hoo! Turn off the lights, everybody turn off the lights, oh yeah, turn off the lights.
So basically we just have the telescope here, and you can look through it. So here's the eyepiece right here. So you can just look through this eyepiece, and we have it set up so that you can enjoy it both digitally and with your eyes. So we encourage the people to look through the telescope, and when they do, they're looking through the big telescope right here. And then we have the little telescope on top with a camera attached to it. And this little camera can see some details that your eyes cannot. And we can project that onto a screen, either this screen here or the big screen that's in in the classroom that we were at earlier. And we can completely computer control this. I can control this completely from within the yurt, or I can control it up here manually using the hand controller, and it will point at any object that I tell it to. I can show it specifically for the public to enjoy.
The observatory basically, it solidified the Summer Star Party. And by doing that, we know that they're going to come back. Because at the same time, we made a dark sky campground where people can come and camp who don't need light. It's all kind of fits in one big package. I don't think we can single one out over the other kind of thing, but everything seems to fit.
So not everybody can stay up late in the night and go viewing the stars. If you're a family with young kids, sometimes it just doesn't work for you. So we try to provide other educational opportunities during the daylight hours that we can still capture people and let them know what the Dark Sky Preserve is.
Solar viewing is something you do when you can't do night viewing because the sun is up. And the sun is actually a pretty interesting object anyway. So what people start with in solar viewing is in white light. You just get a really, really dark filter, and it has to be an appropriate solar filter. Very important to protect your eyes. And if you do that, you'll be able to see sunspots. And the wonderful thing about sunspots is that they change constantly. So it's very interesting to watch them over a period of days. More recently, in the past 15 years or so, the amateur astronomers have had made available to them hydrogen alpha filters, which are really very narrow band red light filters, and they give you a whole different view of the sun. And in particular, you can see prominences on the edge of the sun, which are gas jets coming out of the sun and following the magnetic field lines of the sun and going back into the sun. It's often looped back. Occasionally, a prominence might actually escape from the sun, and those charged particles can come out as far as the Earth or beyond, and if they happen to intersect the Earth, they'll get trapped in the Earth's magnetic field and directed down to the north and south magnetic poles, and they cause the northern and southern lights. It's just an amazing thing that you can watch the sun during the day and see these sunspots and see the prominences, and if you're lucky, you might actually see one of the flares that is going to intersect the Earth in 2 or 3 days hence. So it's just a fantastic thing that connects you to the universe.
The folklore, it comes from my real interest in history and also my not being very good at science and not understanding a lot of the big concepts of astronomy. It started off at Lookout Point when we had one telescope, one pair of binoculars. We were out there, we'd have 50, 60, 70 people, and we'd gather them around, they'd lay down in the grass, and we'd do a constellation tour. And because we had them there, it was like a captive audience. We started learning the stories beyond just the Greco-Roman constellation ones. And so looking at Arcturus, which is one of the brightest stars in the summer sky, and there's a story of how Coyote was always trying to show off to the girls, and so he would take his eyes out and juggle. And then one time he juggled one so high it got stuck in the sky, and that's Arcturus. And so kids really relate to that. They go, oh, that's Coyote's eye. And instead of, they'll forget the name Arcturus, but they'll sure remember it's Coyote's eyeball. To know that when we're looking up at these stars and the constellations, that we're looking at things that haven't changed in thousands and thousands and thousands of years, and it goes back to our very deepest ancestors, that they looked at these same things. So that connection to the world's cultures is through the stars as far as I'm concerned. Humankind has always tried to make a connection with everything. And I find with the Dark Sky Preserve and the Saskatchewan Summer Star Party and all the astronomers coming up, we're teaching people about the night sky, because when you live in a city, you ignore it. You don't even know it's there. One of the things I've started this year is a new hike. It's called A Walk with Nyx, and she was the Greek goddess of night, because my years of doing astronomy, I realized people are so frightened of the dark. You turn our lights off and they don't know what to do, and they have to have their white lights, and they're all nervous. And so I thought, well, I'm just going to take people out in the dark, and we're going to walk around a trail. And we'll have some very minimal lights if they need it. And so I did that, and I had 59 people. And we had one of those glorious starlit nights, and no one turned their flashlights on. Everybody was happy. And I just gave them some cultural information on why we are instinctively afraid of the dark. But we don't have to, like, logically be afraid of the dark. I like the cultural connections, and then we get a balance with Mark, and when the Summer Star Party is here, they do the real science stuff. So it's a good leveler.
There was a special night, it was August 18th, 2001. I was out in the Meadows campground, which was just a basic bare piece of ground, and we were set up with my telescope. I was looking out in towards the rising constellation of Taurus, looking for an object I hadn't seen yet in my big telescope. And I went looking for this object called the Crab Nebula, or M1. And I started at a particular star, and then I'd actually star hopped the wrong way, but I kept running across this fuzzy object up there, and I didn't know what it was. And it just so happened by coincidence that my friend Richard Huziak from the Saskatoon Center stumbled by at 3:30 in the morning and said, "What are you looking at?" And I said, "Well, honestly, I'm not sure. I think it's a galaxy, but so I'm just checking my charts." So he walked out to the telescope and took a look in the eyepiece and said, "Hey, that looks like a comet." Then the race was on to figure out what is it, that we're looking at. So we started looking at our star charts, and there was no comets in that part of the sky. And what we actually did is we drove down to the Cypress Resort here and used the payphone and made a phone call down to Cambridge, Massachusetts, and left an observation of this comet. It basically confirmed that the comet was a new comet, and that the next night, if you can find it again, please do so and let us, get some information and coordinates and send that to us, right? So they were actually going to be contacting observers in Europe and North America to see if they could find it again. So reading between the lines, we pretty much knew that it was a brand new comet. And then I got up at the star party that evening and announced that we had a potentially brand new comet discovered, and the place just erupted and went crazy. The star party was really all about a bunch of people coming and enjoy the dark skies. But when the comet discovery happened, it really set in motion with people that something special actually happened here, and it's an extremely rare event to find a comet. And having people like the Friends of Cypress doing fundraising and building an entire observatory and classroom in Cypress Hills for all people to enjoy, and that come and visit the place is just phenomenal. It's awesome.
And with the huge amount of interest in the sky and in the celestial stars, I think it was kind of fitting that we did build the observatory. All the children that come, you could almost say that they're glassy-eyed when they come out of here.
I think just seeing the stars, it's something that really appeals to people for some very deep, long-term evolutionary reason. It's really deep in our psyche to like stars.
Our mission is basically to get the public involved, give them a place where they can enjoy the dark skies that are being protected for their benefit. Usually you can't just walk into an observatory and be like, "Hey man, show me something." But here you can. You can walk up here and say, "Hey man, show me something," and I'll show you something.
We get them started. We're shaking hands with the sky, the dark sky that they just don't see. Most people just don't see it.
We're a very wide-ranging park to come to. It appeals to a wide-ranging audience of all ages. It's pretty special here.
If you have program ideas that you'd like to see on maxTV Local On Demand, write us at max.local@sasktel.com.